I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and it's mostly been about Star Wars. And this question popped into my head, and I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about it, or what your thoughts are on it, or how deep this goes. So I'm going to start off right away and just ask you, do you like Star Wars? Now, I don't want a knee-jerk reaction. I want you to really stop and think about it. How much of a fan of Star Wars are you? If you look around nowadays, Star Wars is absolutely incredibly unavoidable. It is everywhere. There are games, movies, TV shows, toys in the case of Lego and whatnot. There's clothing line, there's shoes, there's bags, there's accessories, there's everything for Star Wars. It's absolutely insane when you think about it. This franchise has just gotten so out of control huge that I don't know what to do with it. Before I tell you whether or not I like Star Wars, and I answer my own question, I think I want to tell you a little bit about where I come from when it comes to Star Wars, or I want to tell you about my history with Star Wars. So we're going to go way back to when I was just a little kid. Every Sunday, my family would go and visit with my aunt and my grandma. This was a Sunday tradition, and me and my brother were bored out of our minds because we were 10 and 12, and we had nothing to do over there. But it was a great time for my family to get closer together and spend some quality time with each other. To keep my brother and I entertained while they were socializing, they would usually put a movie on in the background for us to watch. And that is actually where I discovered a lot of movies that kind of shaped my tastes in film and media in general. For example, that's where I discovered Pinocchio, All Dogs Go to Heaven, as well as A Brave Little Toaster. And those movies, for kids, seem normal on a surface level. But if you really look at each one of those movies under a microscope, they are really messed up and not for kids. But I am really glad I saw them, and they were great. But I'm kind of getting off topic. Star Wars. This is where I discovered Star Wars. I don't remember if I actually saw A New Hope over at my aunt's house, but I did see Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes Back over there. I distinctly remember seeing the Millennium Falcon flying through the remade Death Star near the end of the sixth movie, and how much fun it was to just watch that, and Han Solo getting defrosted from carbonite, and all that fun stuff that happens in the original 3 movies. That is kind of where I started with Star Wars. So around the corner from my aunt's place, there was a toy shop that sold AT-ST walkers and the little ships from the Battle of Hoth, and all kinds of other fun little Star Wars toys that I just absolutely loved. So I had a few of those. Beyond the movies that I saw over at my aunt's house and the toys that I had, when I was growing up, I didn't have a lot of exposure to Star Wars. I knew that the stuff was out there. There was a billion different types of Legos and toys and collectibles and merchandise that came from the movies, but I was never really on board with it. There was a lot of cool stuff, but it was like, yeah, okay, this is nice. Now, aside from my history, if you look back at Star Wars history as a whole, there is at least one game from Star Wars for every single console I think that exists out there. I mean, there's probably some Chinese console that I haven't really heard of that has offshoot stuff that doesn't have it, but I'm talking about like the main stuff going as far back as Atari, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Genesis, the old stuff. Like starting there and moving forward, there was always been a couple different Star Wars games per console. That's kind of weird. That is just an example of how big of an influence it was on the gaming industry. So there are all these Star Wars games out there, but I never really played many of them. Well, at least growing up. Except for, the Star Wars Shadow of the Empire for N64 was one of the first games that I got for the N64, and I remember that game gave me nightmares. And it wasn't like super hard that gave me nightmares or whatever, but it was one of those like the low poly graphics that made everything look kind of weird. And then there was, I actually have a pretty big fear of drowning, and there was a sewer level near the end of the game where you spent most of the round underwater, and there was a boss that made these horrifying noises, and it scared me. It scared me so much as a kid, and I still can't really play through that level. I've seen like YouTube videos of it, and I'm like, this is weird, why am I scared of this? But it still messes with my head. So there was that, and then like the Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, which didn't really make much of an impact on me, but that was it for me in Star Wars. Like I knew there were a bunch of games out there, but I didn't really play any of them. And honestly, none of the Star Wars games really held a huge impact with me. They were just kind of there. Now, moving forward, again, I mentioned the Episode 1 Pod Racer. I remember in my teenage years, Star Wars Episode 1, 2, and 3 started to come out, and they were such a big deal. Everyone was talking about Star Wars again. Oh my god, it's back. It's going to be great. George Lucas making more stuff. And it's kind of like it is now with the new Star Wars movies being made. Everyone's freaking out about it, and everyone's super excited about it. And it's just the big thing that everyone's talking about. Now, going back, the Star Wars Episode 1, I honestly still love that movie. I enjoy it a lot. It may not be the greatest movie out there, but I still have a lot of fun with it. Episode 2 and 3 exist and have some good ideas, but I mean, I'm not here to judge the movies. I'm here to talk about Star Wars and whether or not I like it, which I'm getting to eventually. So the Star Wars Episode 1, 2, and 3 movies, I remember going to see as a family. I would go with my dad and my mom. It was a really fun time. And when we saw Episode 2, I remember my mom specifically saying, oh my god, this is the story of Darth Vader, this is a big deal. I was a huge fan of Weird Al at the time, and he did the American Pie cover all about Anakin and the whole Star Wars Episode 1, 2, and 3. It was a good time. It had a lot of memories tied to me through nostalgia, and I spent a lot of time with my family during that time watching these movies and enjoying it together. But the games, not so much. Fast forward to modern day Nate. I currently play Star Wars games like crazy. They are a big part of my life. And I say that because I currently am playing Star Wars X-Wing, the tabletop miniatures game, Star Wars Destiny, the trading card game, Star Wars Battlefront 2, I play whenever I'm over at my brother's place. And in the last couple of years, I have made it a point to go back and play some of the older games for PlayStation 2 and Dreamcast that I hadn't really played before. So a lot of my hobby time is spent in Star Wars. And then, of course, the new movies are coming out, and I'm making it a point to go see them. They do not drop off my radar. I make sure to see them in theaters. It's very important to me to do that and grab some of my favorite people to watch it with them. And Star Wars is still a big, big part of my life. And when the new movie came out and everything started back up again, it maintained its presence as a big part of my life. That being said, anything that has ever moved me, has ever really like rocked me at my core and made me remember it, is something that I always cherish. Like, I will defend it to my grave, and I will say that this is a wonderful piece of art, or I will sing its praises forever, and I think it's the greatest thing in the world. If you look at any of the games on my top 5 list that I made a couple weeks ago, pretty much anything on there, I'll fight you for it. Like, I don't know how else to put it. I love it so much. I will recommend it till I die, and I will defend it till I die. It made such a huge impact on me. That's what that is. So when it comes to Star Wars, though, I've never felt that burning passion, that yearn to recommend it to everybody, no matter what it is Star Wars related. It's an interesting thing because I spend so much of my life in the Star Wars world, but I don't care that much. It never really resonated with me. It never really struck a chord with me on a super deep level that made me go, oh my god, I need this in my life. I need this as part of me. I've had a lot of people that I know that talked about the extended universe books, and I will have them tell me what the story's about in great detail, and I will allow them to fanboy all over me, and I am super happy that they do that because it's my way of absorbing their excitement and their knowledge of the Star Wars universe without me having to spend the time to read the books. But I do not have that burning passion for Star Wars, and it's a weird thing for me because I spend a lot of money and time on this brand, but I don't care about it the same way I do BioShock or Bloodborne. I'm not a ravenous fan for it. It's cool, it's great. I honestly think one thing that's interesting about Star Wars is it's a great place for filmmakers and game developers and people who want to really play, to experiment, and automatically guarantee success. It's kind of a weird thought, but for example, X-Wing is actually I don't know the order that came out, so that I might be wrong on this, but there's a game called Star Trek Attack Wing, and there's also a game called Dungeons & Dragons Attack Wing. They are essentially the same game as X-Wing, but they never really took off the same way they did. As soon as the same mechanics were ported over to Star Wars, they were able to take those and run with it. X-Wing has become exponentially more successful over the last couple of years. It's insane. Also, you have a lot of weird, interesting characters that people latch onto and love for almost no reason, but they do, and it's wonderful. Boba Fett, Jango Fett, they didn't really have much to do with the entirety of Star Wars, but if you look deep, you can go deep, and there's more there, and people love it. It's wonderful. Darth Maul is another character that was loved so much that it expanded on the backgrounds, and I'm sure the people who came up with those characters are absolutely loving the fact that their creative children are now fan favorites somewhere. Talking about experimenting in media, I give Star Wars a lot of props, especially lately. Star Wars Episode 7, they seemed to make it a point to put female and non-white people in their leading roles or more prominent roles. And that's just something you don't see a lot nowadays, and it's a little... I am very personally against whitewashing, and that's a whole political thing that I don't really want to get into, but I just think it's great that the people who are backing Star Wars are experimenting. They're pushing the envelope in ways that aren't safe, because they know they can, because it's Star Wars and everyone loves Star Wars and it's going to make a profit. So it doesn't really matter. You can just push it the way you want it to. Also, still on the note of experimentation, there are a lot of games out there, video games that for the most part wouldn't have seen the light of day, like the pod racing games that, because it's pod racing, it got successful. There was a Star Wars Kinect game, which was a collection of mini games, which is essentially just a tech demo for the Kinect that came out when the Kinect launched, and it was a very financially successful game, and the idea remained afloat, even though there was a dancing simulator and a city destroying simulator and a really crappy pod racing, and just all of these opportunities for creators to experiment and not have to take the risk of a new IP or a new franchise, and the branding is there and it makes it powerful. So when it comes to Star Wars, I think it's great that they are allowing experimentation and evolution of their media, because it's Star Wars. People have imagination there. People grow there. And because the brand is so strong, it doesn't matter what you put in there. People are still going to love it. There's Jar Jar Binks, as much as he is hated and everyone thinks he's just the worst thing in the world, there's a Sith fan theory about him, and he's become a very interesting, hated but loved because he's hated character. In the Star Wars Destiny game that I played, there's a card being made of him that actually aids your opponent in a way, but people are still going to play it because it's Jar Jar, because people love to make people hate, I guess. But either way, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Star Wars gives the opportunity to experiment, and I have gone way off track with this a bit, but I'm not sure how to answer my own question. Do I like Star Wars? Yes. I guess if I'm just going to boil it down, yes, I do. But it's not one of my favorite things. It's not even close to up there with something I would recommend to someone. It's just a thing that is a good time waster. Now, one of the things also that I've always known Star Wars for, which is kind of weird and a very personal thing, but Star Wars has always been my cure-all for when I have the flu or I'm really sick. And when I say sick, I mean that level of sick that you are too sick to look at a screen and play video games. The level that you're just stuck in bed and you can't do anything but sit. And Star Wars is a cure-all for me because I have a ritual. What I'll do is when I feel this crappy, I will put episode 4, 5, and 6 on a playlist. I will start the playlist. I will lay down in front of the TV. I will barely watch it, but watch it enough and hear it so that it's something to distract myself and rest. And I'll only get up for food or water or bathroom or whatever. But either way, by the time the 3 movies are done, I'm usually significantly better. I'm usually able to sit up and go on about my day or do some other things around the house. But basically, Star Wars, sitting down watching episode 4, 5, and 6 has cured me from enough colds for me to remember it and make a point of it. It's a personal thing, but it's really great. So, I mean, I guess that's what I have about Star Wars, and everyone is super excited about the new movie. I haven't seen it yet. Please don't spoil it for me. If you have seen it, tell me what you think about Star Wars. How important has it been in your life? How much of an impact has it made for you? It's garnished a lot of memories for me, but it's definitely not one of my favorite things out there. There's so much more better out there. I would even say something like Ori and the Blind Forest, which was just a really one-off random game, has made significantly more of an impact on me than Star Wars has, and it's not even up there in my top games, and it's not even that amazing of a game. It's like, it's good, it's great, but Star Wars, it's there, it's good, it's provided a lot of ground for media developers to experiment with in a safe, awesome way, or at least that's how I see it. Tell me if I'm wrong there. Anyway, let me know what you think. That's Star Wars. Let's talk Star Wars.